G'day everyone, it's Maydad Ronan here, coming at you live from Bondi Beach, Sydney, Australia. Thank you for joining us this Monday morning here in Australia. Today we're joined by a great friend of mine that I've known for over 15 years. He's a former Florida Boxing Hall of Fame inductee, a famous world-class ring announcer who's worked with Mike Tyson, Don King, Phil Lassie, Top Rank, and many, many other well-known boxing promotions and organizations. Would you please welcome to today's show, Bob Alexander? How are you, Bob?
I'm doing well, Maydad. How are you, my friend?
I'm doing great. But Bob, it's great having you here today and to be able to catch up with you and talk to you about your journey through boxing and your career. Is it possible for us to ask you for you to share with us a little bit about your journey before getting into boxing, before becoming the well-known figure and ring announcer that you are today?
Be happy to. Was born in September of 19 Detroit, Michigan, the home of my hero, Thomas the Hitman Hearns. Lived there for 10 years, and then my family moved to Florida, and I've been here ever since, just over 50 years. Had a great childhood growing up. Everything was good. Boxing around the age of 13. I would have loved to have tried to become a boxing amateur anyway, but there were no gyms in this so I hung a heavy bag in my garage and a speed bag and bought some gloves. And my friends came over, and we would pretend to be Muhammad Ali and George Foreman or whoever was big at the time. But I had a lot of fun with that. Mainly, I played American football for many years, all the way from school up, and that was the sport of my choosing as far as participating. But once I got into boxing, I mean, I kept hoping that there would be an opportunity for me to get into a gym at some point. Unfortunately, that never happened. So, but I never stopped. I was about 13 when I started watching the fights, and I started collecting the books and magazines, and I watched every fight that was television, which back in those weekend. Every weekend, all the major networks would have pro boxing on. So that's I learned most of what I know of boxing from the mid 1970s on. As the great fighters like Muhammad Ali and George Foreman and Joe Frazier and so many more. Roberto Duran was on the scene at that point, and of course, like I said. Thomas the Hitman Hearns was my hero because he and I are from the same hometown. So that's kind of my journey as far as being a fan.
You mentioned a lot in your journey about watching different fights. Can you remember any memorable fights as a young man growing up that you did go and watch? I mean, I know back in the 70s there were so memorable fights with Spinks and Ali. Were you there at any of those fights?
I was a little bit young to be going off here when I got into really being a big fan, but I'll tell you, it was in a fight that I went to was here in Florida. It was in 1988, and John the Beast Mugabe, who wound up being a world champion, he was also inducted in the Florida Boxing Hall of Fame, and I believe he has been living down under for several years now, staying in boxing down Europe. But he was fighting here in Florida, just about Fort Myers, which is about a half hour from where I live. He was fighting in the main event of a show that I was watching. And it was at that show that I was listening to the ring announcer. And I got to be honest, I don't like to be critical, but boy, I tell you, the guy was terrible. He didn't have any clue what he was talking about. He didn't know how to be a ring announcer. He didn't know how to the proper way to introduce the fighters. He didn't know how to read the decision properly. And as I was watching, sometimes we all have that little voice that to say something, and usually this little voice jumped in my head and said, "Hey, you know what? You could do that job. You could be a ring announcer because you've got the voice for it. You aren't afraid to be in front of people, and you know how to read a decision or an introduction. So why don't you go try that? And I thought, wow, that's a great idea. I'd love to be up in the ring with those guys and, be there to introduce them and all that sort of stuff. So that was really the first idea that I had about being a ring announcer. Well, it was 1988.
Wow. And we both know John the Beast McGabby. I've rung him several times. He does live here in Australia. He lives in a different state, but we've spoken many times. Obviously, we both know that John the Beast McGabby was trained by my teacher, Jimmy Williams, and we have strong ties in that way. But and you've been doing an amazing job. You've covered so many great fights. Can you recall the year you got in and your very first fight where you got into calling fights? And where was that fight? It's a while
Oh
back.
my gosh, yes. The very first fight was, that fight was held on a tennis court. They put big 4x8 sheets of plywood on the tennis court and then put the ring on top of that. The only problem is they didn't give themselves a roof. And one of the things that happens in June in Florida is it rains. And we got hit with a huge thunderstorm before the show started. And the water on the tennis court was ankle deep. And some of the boards were so warped from the flood that they started popping. They started shooting up these boards. So it was difficult to walk. Well, they finally got the rain out of the way. They started the show late, probably 2 hours late. And things went okay for the beginning, but just before the main event, my microphone died and they didn't have a backup microphone. So I went to the commission head, the guy that was running the whole thing. I said, what do I do? I don't have a microphone. He says, well, you got only one choice. He said, you have to shout. I was like, are you serious? I got to shout? And he goes, yeah, that's what you got to do. So I started, ladies and gentlemen, from the middle of the ring. But the problem is it was a big arena, and a lot of people to hear me and let about it. They started throwing things at me because they were mad I didn't get hurt. So I got through the show and I got out of there. I was soaked from the rain. And I thought to myself, is this something I really want to do that bad? And
30 years later, you're still doing it.
I'm still doing it. For I think time I've been doing it, and I'm very happy that I made the decision.
Can you tell us a little bit about working with HBO, for example, or some of the promotions that you have worked with in the past?
Yes, I've been very blessed. ESPN used to have their Friday night series, and every time they would come the teams to the state of Florida, wherever it was, whether it was Tampa, Fort Lauderdale, or Orlando, I was always getting to come work because I built a close relationship with them, and they would always recommend me to the promoters that were putting on the show. So I had a great opportunity there, and just HBO and Showtime were two of the networks I worked on, and I had a great time with that. When I went to work for Mike Tyson in 2014, that pretty much was what really opened the door for me as far as big time television is concerned, because his company, was on all the major networks, and I got a lot of exposure for that. And I got to tell you, Mike Tyson treated me as well as anybody. He was funny. He was always joking around with me, and I was able to get to know him and work under him. And we did some great shows together. But it's hard to remember all those I've done in the last 30 plus years. It was at Boardwalk Hall in Atlantic City, New Jersey. I was working for the company Seminole Warriors Boxing, and they had a Russian fighting for them, Sultan Ibragimov, and he fought Shannon Briggs, who was the champion. And I got to announce it was on pay-per-view. It was seen by millions of people around the world, including a lot of folks in Russia. And I was able to do that fight, and Ibragimov won. So I was able to introduce a new heavyweight champion of the world. And that was just, that was so great. I got to work at Madison Square Garden one show in New York City, which is just, that was just a dream come true.
But Bob, there's been some amazing moments, including the one you got inducted. Can you recall that and share with us that moment? Because it must have been quite elating for someone like you.
Yeah, it was. I never thought I'd be in any kind of Hall of Fame in my career or my life. And to be put in the class of 2010 alongside Don King and Muhammad Ali in that same class, such an honor. I the first class, which was in 2009, the class that Steve Canton and Pinkerton Thomas and many other greats were put in. Steve Canton joked with me. I was the host that year. And he joked with me and said, "We're going to have to get another host next year when you go in." I laughed at him. I'm like, "Yeah, right, sure." Well, sure enough, I got the call from then president that I was going to go in the class of 2010. And I'll never forget the feeling that day. It was like I was walking on clouds. It was just a surreal feeling, so full of happiness, and had so many friends, family members came to Tampa to be there to watch my induction. And it was just an amazing thing. And every year since, of course, I've been the host. We just had our 17th class induction this past June. And I've been fortunate to be the host. A few years ago, when Steve Canton became the president, he asked me to be his vice president. So that was a great honor. And I'm just enjoying that so much. But I spend probably 6 months out of the year doing research and doing interviews with the folks that are going to be inducted. And a lot of people ask me, why do you put so much time into it? Because I want to give those folks a great experience on their induction day. I want them to feel exactly how I felt. So that's why I do my research. That's why I do the interviews. That's why I spend so much time writing all the scripts and everything. It's an honor for me to do that because I want to continue for the folks that are going in every year. I want them to feel exactly how I felt. And when I do induct people, I get that same feeling back again from the time that I was inducted. So it's just a great experience, a great event. Florida is rich in boxing history. So many fighters and so many gyms and people. And like you said, it's not just the fighters. It's the doctors. It's the judges. It's the referees. All these folks were responsible for making boxing great in the state of Florida. And the one thing I love is that most halls of fame only put in maybe 5, 6, 7 people a year. We put in close to 20 every year because we want the Hall of Fame to grow. And the more people we're able to get into it, the more we're going to grow, the more our base is going to grow. So that's what I love about our Hall of Fame. We don't make people wait ridiculous amounts of time. If you're worthy, you're going to be inducted and you won't have that long to wait.
That's amazing, Bob. I couldn't even imagine how you feel, how elating that feeling would be to be inducted. I was there when I think Roberto Duran and Aaron Pryor got inducted, and
That's right.
just the year of the passing of Angelo Dundee, but it was also the year where I met my teacher Jimmy Williams, and we've had some pretty amazing moments, including I think my moment with Jimmy Williams when I won the WBF super bantamweight title and gave him my belt was a pretty special moment. Can you remember that time?
Oh, absolutely. I got to tell you, I got to know Jimmy before we started the Hall of Fame. In fact, I met Jimmy right before that fight that I told you about, where the ring announcer was so bad. I was there as a radio reporter, and I used to go to the training workouts. It was held at a hotel in Fort Myers, and I got to know Jimmy from that first show on. And then, of course, once I started ring announcing in the Tampa area, we got to hook up again and again. And he was at so many shows that I worked, and I just loved sitting and listening to all of the all the amazing stories and hearing about the people he met and how he grew up, in New York. And he was just a treasure. I loved him so much. I know you did too. And it was a real honor. And I know it was for you that we got to know him and be with him and be around him in the fight scene. And, I can't imagine winning a world championship, claiming that belt like you did and giving it to Jimmy. I mean, I'm sure that was probably the highlight of his life.
I know you've had quite an amazing journey with some struggles with your health. You talked to me prior about your some of the health conditions that you have. Can you tell us a little bit about that and your journey with that and how it came about? Like, when did you find out?
Well, I found out that I was a type 2 diabetic back in my early 30s, and I've done what I can to keep my blood sugars low and keep an eye on that sort of thing. About 3 years ago, I started losing weight, and at first it wasn't so noticeable, but people were saying to me, "Hey, are you working out or something? Because you're looking a little bit thinner." And so I was 230 pounds at that point. Within a year, I had dropped all the way down to 119 pounds. So I went from a heavyweight down to a bantamweight. And of course, I'm 6 feet. You're carrying that little weight. You look like a skeleton. And so I knew something was wrong, and I started going to doctors, and nobody could tell me what I had or what the problem was. And I went to the Mayo Clinic in Jacksonville, Florida. Nothing. I went to the Cancer Treatment Center in Tampa, very well known. It's called the Moffitt Center. I was sure I had cancer. I couldn't figure out what it could be. And they said, "We've done every test. You do not have cancer." So finally, interestingly, 𝙬𝙤, the promoter you were talking about earlier that I've worked for many, many years, and Phil, of course, is in the Hall of Fame along with his father. But Phil said to me, "Go see my cousin. He's a neurologist." He said, "Go see him and maybe he can help you out." So I did. I made the appointment. I went and saw him. And he said, what's going on with you? And I explained to him that I had terrible back pain 24/7 and that I had lost over 100 pounds without trying. He looked at me and he said, "I've heard this story about 5 times in 30 years of medicine." He said, "I believe you have diabetic amyotrophy." And I looked at him like, "Diabetic what?" And he explained to me what it is. It's a disorder that only 1% of diabetics get. So I had to get it. But it's a condition that it comes as it wants to. And unfortunately, it goes when it wants to. There's no, just be patient. And because I asked him flat out, I said, "Doc, is this thing going to kill me?" He said, "No, it's going to kill you." He said, "You're just going to have to be patient. When it's ready to start leaving, then you'll start getting your weight back." And that's exactly what happened. And fortunately, in the last year, I've gone from as low as I was, 119 pounds, I'm back up to 160, which is middleweight. I'm hoping to get up to about 180 and then quit. Just stay right there. I never want to be above 200 pounds ever again. But it's been slow. I've got up to 160 a few months ago, and I haven't been able to put much weight in, man. I eat anything I want, but it just hasn't yet. But if this is the weight that I'm going to stay at, if that's what's meant to be, and it's not the worst thing in the world. I can live with that. I do have still a lot of back pain. I have trouble walking sometimes. My balance is still off a little bit, and sometimes I need someone to help me up the steps to the ring and open the ropes so I can get through the ropes to go in and ring announce. If anybody has similar, if you're diabetic and you have similar symptoms, and your doctor's not able to give you the answer, go see a neurologist, go see a specialist, and they can probably give you the same information and the same answer they gave me. But I'm doing better. I'm just, hoping to have some surgery later this year to work on my back pain. But other than that, I'm just taking life, just a little bit at a time. But I'm very thankful that I've gotten my health back, to a certain degree. And I'm able to walk and go see my beautiful grandchildren and get in the ring to work. So I'm not complaining. I'm very blessed and very happy where I am.
That's great news, Bob. For a while, we were all of us were quite concerned about your well-being, and it's great to see you getting that weight again and feeling a lot healthier and more happier and about things. Bob, it's been amazing talking to you. Um, uh, I look forward to seeing you in person soon sometime. Please say hello to everybody. To everybody watching this, just a reminder that next week we'll be catching up with um, Dr. Field's ex-wife, 𝙑𝙬𝙗. She runs her own company called 𝙬𝙤𝙗, which stands for Keeping It All Natural. And she has her group of doctors and practitioners, nutritionists, and health professionals. They do all health and wellness. They're a health and wellness company that help men and women with everything from lymph drainage to massage to facials, you name it. And she'll be talking to us a little bit about her journey, and her team will come on board and share a little bit about the great work that they do. Sorry. So if you want to join us for that Zoom, same time, same place. That's going to be 7 p.m. Florida time, and it's going to be 9 a.m. Monday morning, Australian Sydney time. For all of us that have joined us today or watching this back, have an amazing week, and I look forward to seeing you next week. From Bob in Florida and myself at Bondi Beach, Sydney, Australia, have an amazing day, and we'll see you next time.